Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Also on Twitter and Periscope. At Vin Armani is my handle there. Today, we are not streaming on the Facebook page of our content partner, Activist Post, because for like the dozenth, is that a word? Anyway, one time out of many, but this time using a new strategy, Facebook has blocked our account that we use to stream. So we'll talk about that today, but you can definitely check us out on YouTube and also on Twitter and Periscope, and hopefully we can get that account back up, and then I will just go ahead and post it up for the Facebook viewers. So you may be watching this on a little bit of a delay, but it won't be too much. I'll try to get it up today. So it's 10 a.m. Monday morning, and this is our one-year anniversary show. This is our 53rd show, so we've got a year under our belt, and we've got a great show for you today. We are going to go through and show some of my favorite clips from the last year, some of the great guests that we've had on. It was very, very difficult picking these clips because we've had so many great guests, but what I think you'll find is that it's a very nice summary of the concepts that we talk about on the show. And if you wanted to let people know what this show is about, showing them the second hour and all of the people and the concepts and ideas that are talked about and strategies, I think that it's really a perfect encapsulation of what we stand for. We have some other stories today. I want to follow through on this, on a very interesting narrative that we've been discussing ourselves and also with the editors at Activist Post that I think is going to be important in the next year, really to keep your eyes on. And yeah, let's do it. Let's jump into it. To help me out with all of that today, as always, my good friend, co-host, and producer, Mr. Christian Reyes. Christian.
Good morning, Vin.
Good morning, sir.
Happy 1 year, man.
Yeah, happy 1 year. Congratulations. It's quite a milestone.
Yeah.
You know, what's different with doing a sort of a more regular podcast, a lot of people are not able to pull off the consistency of this time. And it's not just a podcast, right? Because like podcasts go up and okay, maybe they go up every Wednesday, but that's not to say that they go up at a specific time. But for us, it's like Monday morning, 10 a.m. For a year, we've been in here getting it done, and I know that the audience appreciates it. I really am happy to come in every week, and it's exciting to me to be able to like look at the news, talk with you, go over ideas.
Absolutely.
Dude, the last year for me, this has been, I want to thank you because this process for me, I have grown so much as an individual.
Yeah, same for me. Thank you too, man.
Like
seriously.
When I went back and I looked at these clips, you know, trying to figure out, okay, like I was looking at the interviews trying to figure out like, okay, what really encapsulates what it is that we're about, where I wanted to draw out the like these sort of key issues, and we've had so many fantastic guests. It was super hard to find, but I think I did it. Of course, there's some arbitrariness. There were some things that, you know, I could have found from this guest or this guest, but I think I found some really powerful moments in the show from the last year. But as I was looking, I was like, wow, my own thinking has really evolved so much.
That's crazy because I was thinking the same thing. I did a post yesterday. I said, you know, we've done 52 episodes as our 1 year anniversary and a lifetime worth of discoveries.
Dude.
It's
seriously
crazy.
Well, we've been able to stand on the backs of giants, right? And those are some of the people that I included in the show today, are people who have been living it their entire lives, and the fact that we've had the chance and the honor to have them come on and talk with us and really to explore these concepts. It's been wild, man. I mean, it gives me a lot of hope. It's put a fire under my ass. I think about all the things that I've done this year. It's really helped to focus me.
Yeah, me too.
And no, it's great. I'm looking forward to this next year. It can only get better. I think that we've really hit our stride, and there's so much more for us to still do and to contribute. On that note, so part of, you know, what a big issue of this in this last year has been, what we've been covering since literally the first show, concepts of the stifling of free speech, ideas of censorship, really where the media is at, where the corporatocracy is at. This thing with Facebook blocking us again, right? So Facebook has been running an ongoing war on this particular account of ours that we use to stream to activist posts. Already they throttle activist posts traffic like crazy. I mean, it's got 550,000 followers or likes on there. They throttle it out of those people's feeds for sure. So you've got that editorialism going on anyway. What they've been doing for maybe 6 months now at this point with our account is we will go on Mondays to try to log in to stream. And the first thing that they did was they block us, and I've posted screenshots of this. What they do is they block us, and they say, for security reasons, give us a picture. You need to send a picture, right? So a picture that shows your face. Now, they've done this probably 10 times, right? Okay. So we would do that. Sometimes we would be off. Sometimes we'd make it back on. Then they blocked us being able to stream from our streamer. So we had to make our streaming software. So we had to make a workaround for that.
Yeah.
So we did a workaround for that. That's fine. Today, this was a new strategy. What they did was they said, we're going to send a code to the phone number that you have attached to this account and enter the code, and then that's how we'll verify your security. So they did. They sent a code. I entered the code, and it popped back up again, and they sent me a new code. And I entered that code, and it popped back up again, and they sent me a new code. And they did. You saw on my phone, there was what, like 6 or 7 codes? And then when it was like, didn't work, and then I said, resend, there was a thing that said resend code. It said, you have to wait 1 minute before requesting a new code. I wait 5 minutes, send it again. You have to wait 1 minute before requesting a new code. So I mean, this is typical, right? And it brings up, and this is what's interesting. I say it's lit a fire under my ass. Well, I've been talking about putting together this IPFS. What I will say is it's a tool set. It's a code library. What it enables you to do, it's all completely decentralized, all inside the browser. Basically, video. It's any type of file sharing. Technically, you could use this for, but specifically, I built it for video sharing. That is, you visit a page, you upload a video, it gives you a hash, an address, which is an IPFS hash. So it lives on IPFS at that point. You go to another page that is the player, and just like YouTube, you know, whatever it is, you put in your thing, $ID equals, and you put in the name of the hash. It pops up a node, it opens a node in your browser in the background, it turns you into an IPFS node, downloads the video, plays the video.
Nice.
This is working. I'm going to put it up on GitHub this week, publicize it. Anybody can take this code and use it.
Wow.
I'll call this an alpha release because there are some things about it's using the native HTML player. There are some things about it, the seek functionality, I still haven't been able to quite figure out. It can only hold a certain amount of buffer. It plays just fine, no problem. Uploads videos, plays just fine. That's all fantastic, but it's open source. I hope people take a look at it. I hope that somebody decides that they want to go and do work on this seek function in their spare time. I would love that, and cool. Contribute that to the code. That's how we get this thing moving. But anybody could take this. You could literally create a YouTube clone if you wanted. I mean, a clone. And have all of your serving, your file serving, be both the hosting and the serving be 100% free for everyone involved. No servers required. No money needed.
Crazy.
You can host it on IPFS, so you don't even need a server. All you need is the code and the time. It's written in JavaScript, and it opens an IPFS node. Uncensorable. So this is it.
This
is what we're talking about, solutions, right?
Yep.
It's like, instead of complaining, you know, and that's the whole thing, that it's like, I more laugh at it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not about complaining. It's about more laughing at it and being like, oh, well, you don't know who you're fucking with. Like, if you, and we said that from the beginning, Like, if the mainstream media had been doing their job, if they hadn't been lying, if they hadn't been spreading fake news, if they hadn't been playing their part as an arm of the state, you and I wouldn't be sitting here. There would be no reason for us.
Exactly.
If YouTube and Facebook and Twitter weren't trying to play this censorship role, there would be no reason for DTube. There would be no reason for BitChute. There would be no reason for Gab.ai. There would be no market incentive for me to sit down and try to figure out this code and then to give it away. Because that's the thing. Like, this is open source. I'm giving it away. I hope that it's one thing to build DTube. And we love those guys. It's one thing to build BitChute, and we had Ray Vahi on the show. We love them, right? I want there to be 10,000 of these things. Here's the code to do it. Totally free, and it's super easy to use. If you even have a basic web design, and that's what was taking me so long. What was taking me so long was taking the code logic and moving it off so that it's just an include and then just a few lines that even somebody who doesn't know code would be able to follow if they were just a web designer, right? To add it in. If all they knew was HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript, they can use this. They can create it. You don't even need a server because you host it all on IPFS.
Wow. You know, that's a perfect example of a simple concept, but often overlooked. It's when there's a problem, there's an opportunity.
Oh,
you know.
That's what, and I think that this is what a lot of people don't understand about entrepreneurship, right? And Jack Spirko is, of course, one of the people that I had to, of course. I mean, it's nuggets of gold. He's one of the people that you'll see in the second hour. His message in that particular segment was so powerful, and it was great. And I'm going to be next week, actually, out in Texas on his homestead.
Wow.
He does a twice yearly kind of little small conference, always sells out, you know, with several speakers and whatnot. So I'm going to be there. I'm going to be speaking for 2 days, hanging out with people there. So everybody that's going, everybody that'll be there, I'm looking forward to hanging out with all of you guys. And of course, Jack is fantastic. But
yeah, he's awesome.
Where was I going with Spirko on this?
Problem, opportunity.
Oh, yes. And you know that Spirko often talks about the importance of entrepreneurship in terms of the liberty movement. And what most people don't understand about what entrepreneurship really is it's solving problems.
Yep, exactly.
If you want to get rich, you're going to have to solve problems that people have, because that's what people want to pay for. If you think about the things that you pay for, you pay people to solve your problems.
Yeah.
So, you know, when people talk about, oh, the terrible capitalists and all that, and it's like, a capitalist can only make money if he solves somebody's problem.
Well, that's what even the quote-unquote globalists are doing. They're paying a whole bunch of people to solve their problems.
That's what I'm saying. This is something that people need to understand, that it's like, when you know, don't separate business from anything else. As we were talking about before the show, we were talking about value.
Yeah, great conversation, by the way.
And it's just, what is creating value? It's solving problems. Because what do people value? They value solutions to their problems. What's valuable? You're hungry. That's a problem. What's valuable? Food. So therefore, you pay for food. You're sick. What's valuable? Healthcare. So therefore, you pay for healthcare. But what we were also talking about is, if you get something for free,
devalue.
You don't value it at all.
Value.
You don't value it at all. Well, clearly it has no value. I got it for free. How could it have value? Everything that has value I have to pay for. So clearly this has no value. There's no exchange. There's no quid pro quo.
What's interesting too is exchange is a universal principle. It's going to happen somewhere. Just because you don't pay for it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen.
Oh, yeah, well, that's nothing comes for free, right? There's always an exchange. But it's just like, wouldn't you rather have the exchange that you're conscious of?
Right.
Wouldn't you rather be a conscious participant in the exchange of value rather than have it extracted from you somehow on the back end? I think you would. I think you would. And, you know, there's a saying, most people don't know this, but after Alex Haley, who wrote Roots and the autobiography of Malcolm X, the top-selling black American author of all times is Iceberg Slim, who my first book, Tao of the Gigolo, is dedicated to. He wrote, his most famous book, his first book, is a book called Pimp, The Story of My Life. He was a pimp back in the 40s. This book, I mean, again, second highest selling black author in American history.
Wow.
In all of American literature. This book is cinematic. Like, you read this book and you're like, you get transported like you're in a movie. You can hear the music of the 40s in Chicago. You could see the outfits, everything. It's just like, wow. And the way he writes and the world he describes is like sick. His second book is called Trick Baby. That one, the first one was about like the world of pimps. Amazing. The psychology, everything. It's just, it's epic. The second one is about the world of con men.
Oh, shit.
And it's basically, it's a story told to him when he got sent to jail for a period. His cellmate was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed black guy.
Whoa.
He was actually mixed, but he could pass for white, super white, but raised in the black part of Chicago and became a con man. And they called him white folks, right? They also called him Trick Baby because his mother was a prostitute. That was a trick, a client was his father, right? And so he tells in the same way he tells the story of the con game and the psychology of confidence men. And he describes all these games and exactly how they're played and exactly how the con goes. But one of the things that he says in there is, you can't con an honest man. You can't con an honest man. The con always relies on the greed of the mark. If the mark believes he can get something for free, he can get something for nothing, and he's willing to take something for nothing, that's a mark you can con. Something to think about when you think about universal basic income. Something to think about when you think about free healthcare.
Very interesting.
You can't con an honest man. Nothing comes for free. Nothing.
Yep.
There's always strings attached.
Yep.
So wouldn't you rather just pay up front and wipe the slate clean? Wipe it clean. All right, so IPFS is there. The other thing that I was thinking about over the year, one of the things that we discuss with guests all the time in terms of solutions, and I was thinking about this morning as I wrote down the book orders that I'm going to and wrote in the books, you know, and signed the book orders for this week that I'm going to ship out after the show today, is, and I think one person who I remember saying this, but everybody said it in many, Salatin said it for sure, but I think Corbett explicitly said it, is, you know, how you change the world is who you decide to associate yourself with, but more so, where you decide to spend your time and energy. And part of your energy, your income, represents your energy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a measurement.
It's a representation. It's a store of, so your paycheck, if you get a paycheck, let's say you're paid by the hour, right? That paycheck represents a certain number of hours of your time, right? So where you spend that money is actually where you spend your time. Because time is money.
Right.
Now, if you spend your time reinforcing all of the things that you say that you're against, the Federal Reserve, the state, all of this, if you spend your time giving it to the state, if you spend your time validating the Federal Reserve, if you spend your time utilizing the banking system that you speak out against, who cares what you say? You're just grumbling while you carry your pickaxe to the mine for the slave master.
You know what's interesting too is that would include resistance.
Of course, it includes resistance,
and a lot of people.
That's the key. Don't resist. Take your time. Take your money. Put it elsewhere. It's peaceful, and it's not just that you put it elsewhere in terms of Eric July is also one of the people here, and in the second hour that you'll see, he talks about that in terms of supporting artists, right? But it's not just to support the artists, because we're talking about something much deeper than that. It's like, if you're against the Federal Reserve, if you're against fractional reserve lending, if you're against this fiat nonsense, as Eric Voorhees calls it, who's also one of the people here, right? If you're against that, it's not just where you spend it, but it's how you spend it, which is why this is only available for cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
This is only available for cryptocurrency. That shirt Christian's wearing, only available for cryptocurrency. Because what does it do? And you can throw these up while we're talking. You can throw up the addresses. Selfownership.me, that's for the book. That's for the book. Babyvodka.com. Oh, wrong one. Babyvodka.com. That's for the vodka. Governyourself.com. That's for this and other shirts, because that's the revolution. Every dollar that you move out of fiat and onto the blockchain is a piece of your time that you have spent now. Because you're not spending money, you're spending time. This is your labor now that you have spent to bring about a freer world. It's so easy.
Right, and think about this too, the impact with the instant gratification with that. Instead of going out and making signs and protesting and doing all this weird shit, and you're having a much bigger impact by just
and not only that, it's impact that builds on top of itself. Because every piece that you spend, so a merchant decides that they're going to accept cryptocurrency. Every sale that they make with crypto makes them more interested in selling with crypto, makes them invest more in crypto, makes the businesses that are providing these solutions be able to grow, makes the number of people, developers that they can hire, and staff members that they can hire start to grow. One of those staff members might be you, because shit, you're in the community, you're using crypto.
Yep.
Are you willing to take crypto for a paycheck? Yes. Well, you can go and work for one of these companies that you helped to build. This is the ecosystem. And once we're there, we're out. We're out. The people with the other solutions are waiting. The small-scale, high-yield agriculture. The spirit manufacturers. You know? I just got some cider from my friends Herschel and Norman, who run Granite State Fermentory up in New Hampshire. They just sent me some amazing cider.
Nice. That
they make and sell for cryptocurrency. That was when I first encountered them at PorkFest. They had it set up and they were slanging it for crypto. And they took 15 different kinds right there. And this is it. All the rest of it will work itself out. It will work itself out. Just you as the individual. This is how you do it. This is how we get free. It's so simple. So simple.
Talk about empowerment, man. I mean, there's so much power in that.
And we haven't even scratched the surface, my brother. The world of cryptocurrency, the world of decentralization, the world of the blockchain, we haven't even scratched the surface. We're living in amazing, amazing, amazing times.
Absolutely.
And all people have to do is just decide to do it. And and make it public.
Yeah.
It's not just yes, absolutely, go get yourself a Bitcoin wallet. You go to activistpost.com/Bitcoin. People ask me all the time, how do I get started? Activistpost.com/Bitcoin. I'd suggest Jack's wallet. Go get yourself a Jack's wallet. Although I'm leaning more now, I'm going to start doing development with Bitcoin Cash. I'm going to pick back up my development where I was at.
Nice.
Well,
Shapeshift has a really cool wallet too, right?
Does Shapeshift have they don't have their own wallet.
Jax
is integrated into Shapeshift and into a bunch of different ones.
They have a Prism or something. Is Prism a wallet?
No,
it's
that's more of a platform.
Yeah,
a trading platform. There's so many wallets, right? I like Jax. I use it. It's one of my go-to wallets for sure. But there's like Coinami. Mycelium's a good wallet. You can look around, find wallets. But Start there. And yes, get that. But you know what? On all your social media, put up your Bitcoin address. Put your Bitcoin address in your bio. Or your Ethereum address. Put those in your bio. Let people around you know. And you know what? People are going to reach out to you. People that you know are going to reach out to you and be like, oh, hey, dude, you're into cryptocurrency too? Yeah, I'm into it too. Pfft, here you go. Any exchange between the two of you, now you can do it in crypto. Just because you know what I mean? And this is how you build it. And look, it's totally nonviolent. And it doesn't require you to go out into the streets. It just requires you to change your habits of what you're doing already. Here's an example. Right now, all of my purchases at Whole Foods and on Amazon, I do via crypto.
Nice.
I buy, now, granted, I've got products, so I've got pure crypto coming in, which is what you want. It makes no sense to really go cash to crypto or fiat to crypto just to go back to, but if you have the crypto coming in, if you've done a product or service in crypto, don't cash it out into your Coinbase account. Go buy an Amazon gift card on gift.com. Pop that into your Amazon account. I use Amazon like crazy. So I'm going to spend it anyway. I'm going to spend that amount on Amazon anyway. I'm going to spend that amount at Whole Foods anyway. So I just fill up a gift card and then just use that just like cash. And on Amazon, it's so fast. And it just sits in the balance of your account. And then when you buy something, it just pulls out of the balance of your account. There you go. Spend it. Spend it. Overstock. They'll take it straight. Expedia. Right? Expedia. Southwest. So whenever I travel on Southwest, buy a Southwest gift card on gift.com for the exact amount and then just enter it right in.
And the more people that start doing these things, the more companies want to use it.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is how you do. That's it. It's so easy.
Yeah, simple.
Then you don't have to just withdraw consent. Just fucking withdraw consent. That's it. So the reasons, what it's about though is it's about the philosophical reasons for all of this, right? It's not just enough that things are bad. It's also about getting an understanding of why things are fucked up and what this change means. Because as you move forward, you don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past and you want to have a framework. That's why I wrote this book. Most people don't understand ownership. They don't understand private property. We had a conversation about that earlier, that it's like when you have a strong understanding of private property and people in a society really have a good grasp and know how to respect property rights, you have a peaceful society. Because what are all of our conflicts over?
Yes.
They're all over whose property this is and that is.
Yep.
That's what they're all about. The political, especially the political.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about who gets to control. Who does this belong to? But it's too much of the time it's about how should we spend the money that we're going to steal from you? So it's already there, right? So, okay. I think we can get into the news. 1 year anniversary. So what I want to cover next half hour, and then we'll go into the last hour showing kind of the highlights. There's been, and I've been talking with the editors at Activist Post about this for the last 2 weeks. I actually sort of had this story lined up. We didn't get to it last week. But there's this weird narrative, and it's new. It stood out to me because it's new. And it's strange, and it's coherent. And that's what I want to talk about. This is our news number one. So there's a very strange narrative, and if you haven't been paying attention and it's been bubbling in your subconscious, that's where whoever's creating this narrative would like it to be. Now maybe it's organic. You know, I think a lot of this builds in the zeitgeist. But one thing is that I've noticed that people in the movement, unfortunately, are more than willing to contribute to this particular narrative. Now, this narrative is about what it sort of revolves around. It revolves around, which sells, sex and violence. basically revolves around sexual abuse of all various kinds, but specifically with pedophilia. And I feel like the alternative media grasped onto the whole Pizzagate thing. And now there are other ones. There's the Hollywood one, Corey Feldman. There's, of course, the thing with Weinstein and that sexual abuse. You have now the Me Too hashtag. We got banned from YouTube. The clip that got us banned, and it was weird when we got banned, because I didn't fully understand it, because the narrative had been bubbling, and it had obviously bubbled into the social justice vein enough that the censorship brigade at YouTube got a chance to get their claws in and take us out. It was about sex robots, the morality of sex robots, and the logic and ethical aspects of how we relate to robots, which is something that we've talked about on this show quite a bit. I was surprised that this particular one, of all the things we've talked about, that this particular one got us banned. But now I'm no longer surprised, because I see that this is the new narrative, I think, as we approach this new year. You know, last year was going to be all about the election, the changing around this time. Think about it, late October. We're talking about the election. What did we start covering? Fake news, hacking, Russian involvement, what's going on in the culture. We predicted the North Korea conflict that's simmering right now. Predicted that back in March. Now this is my prediction, because I see this building in some very weird ways, and we've got some weird stories. The first story that hit me on this was from back last week, from the 19th. It just popped on TV. I happened to be hanging out with my mom and her boyfriend, and they had the TV on. I don't own a TV, so I rarely get a chance to watch cable news. They had cable news on. This story popped up, and I said, there's something weird about this. This is the Yara story. Suspected child abusers featured on The Hunt caught. This is from CNN. Joseph Horace Green, 52, and Chanel Nicola Warren, 43, were arrested in Plantation, Florida, on charges they had unlawful sex with a student in the year 2000 while running the Enlightened Minds School in Los Angeles. The pair, who went by the pseudonyms Ty and Tisa Yara, fled Los Angeles in a recreational vehicle after rumors spread that a student had slept in their room during a school field trip. They're driving around in this humongous, they're driving around in this humongous RV, state of the art. You can't miss it, Los Angeles Police Detective Tracy Benjamin told Headline News, quote, but they literally vanished. In the end, the couple was caught after facial recognition technology led investigators to Plantation, Florida, just outside Fort Lauderdale. Quote, the show opened up a new world to us, Benjamin said. Green and Warren were exploring the purchase of another school when police caught up to them, according to Benjamin. They were working with a homeschool network and had been homeschooling their own 4 children. So, Christian, here's what we've got. We've got, now note, some key things in here. Homeschooling. Okay? They were working with a homeschooling network. These people. They were homeschooling their own children. They were featured on The Hunt, which is like America's Most Wanted, I guess. It's like
I don't know.
Same producers, whatever. For something that happened 17 years ago, year 2000, where they were starting some sort of a charter school in Los Angeles. There was a school field trip, and one of the students slept. A rumor was going around that one of the students on this field trip slept in the same room as them. Now, the student said that they had been abused, anything like this. There were rumors within the school that one of the students had slept in the same room as the two of them. Okay. And the police, I guess, wanted to talk with them. 17 years. They've been out doing whatever, going about clearly trying to start another school, homeschooling their own children. Caught with facial recognition technology. So we've got a narrative here. And if it was just this one story, in the span of like 10 days, I would have thought, but it's not. So the narrative is homeschooling, connecting homeschooling with sexual impropriety, connect those two, facial recognition is good. Facial recognition is good. You need to have facial recognition because it will protect you. Facial recognition technology will protect you from pedophiles. Okay? Now, the next story was like the next day. And it's interesting, Miami Herald, South Florida also, weirdly enough. Both of these stories out of South Florida, same week.
Wow.
Okay? This is this search from the Miami Herald. Cops went looking for child porn. The guns and bombs they found were just as, quote, troubling. That's the headline from the Miami Herald. Here's the story. Photographs of schools, 3 bomb devices, guns, and books on how to make explosives were found in a Dunedin man's home Wednesday, officials report. Deputies with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office were executing a search warrant at 1234 Royal Oak Drive North in Dunedin when they found the devices. Randall Drake, 24, was a suspect in a child pornography investigation, with officials suspecting that he had child porn in his home and was distributing it, according to the Sheriff's Office. Wednesday, officials went into the home looking for items connected to the child pornography investigation, but instead found 3 explosives, the photos, and books locked inside a locked bedroom closet, according to the Sheriff's Office. 2 of the homemade bombs were made of metal cylindrical cigar tubes containing gunpowder and wicks for detonation, and a third from a plastic tube containing gunpowder, wrapped in tape with a fuse, according to the Sheriff's Office. The devices were safely removed from the home by the Hillsborough Bomb Squad team. A folder with aerial photos of Esrig Elementary School and Ben Hill Middle School in Hillsborough County, along with another of a water treatment plant, were also found in the closet. Detectives also found books and handwritten notes on how to make explosives, the Sheriff's Office reported in a new release. One of the handwritten notes read, quote, "The daughters come, and I am ready. I have fed on my hatred for centuries. My fury at those who imprison me shall be vast and without mercy. I shall have my bloody revenge, and then the world will burn, unquote. Inside the home Drake shared with his parents, officials also found 10 rifles, to include an AK-47, 8 handguns, 2 shotguns, more than 2,300 rounds of ammunition and gunpowder, a makeshift silencer, more than 15 knives, a baseball bat with nails sticking out, a crossbow, and brass knuckles. Sheriff Bob Galtieri called the discovery, quote, troubling, and compared Drake to Stephen Paddock, the man police say shot into a crowd at a music festival in Las Vegas earlier this month. Quote, Randall appears to be, as we would refer to as a sleeper, Galtieri said. We have no criminal intelligence on him. Drake was charged with 2 counts of unlawfully making, possessing, or attempting to make a destructive device and taken to the Pinellas County Jail without incident. He refused to speak with investigators. Officials are investigating why Drake had so many devices and what his intentions may have been. Drake has no criminal history and or history of mental health issues, according to the Sheriff's Office. Quote, it's very concerning, Galtieri said, adding that Drake appears to have been acting alone. Quote, he could have caused some serious damage. His parents told officials Drake was homeschooled from the time he was in 3rd grade and was once a Tampa police explorer. He is no longer associated with the program, Galtieri said. The parents told officials they knew their son had a few guns, but were not aware of the extent. Nothing was found in connection with the child pornography investigation as of yet, Galtieri said. The investigation is ongoing. So here's what you've got, Christian. We've got the police executing a search warrant on a house based on suspected that there's a guy who has child pornography and is distributing it. They go and execute the search. No child pornography is found. Okay? What they find that they charge him for are 2 explosive devices. Now, I had this fired up last week, and it's unfortunate I had put together the slideshow because people can go and check this thing out. What they actually found were 2, it says it right here, cigar tubes. You know how big is a cigar tube?
Right, yeah, okay.
This big?
Yeah.
Cigar, it's the metal tube that a cigar comes in. He had packed that with gunpowder, filled it with gunpowder, put a wick in it, and taped it up.
Made a firecracker, basically.
A firecracker.
Yeah.
2 of them.
Uh-huh.
That's what they arrested him for. Now, what else did they find? 10 rifles, to include an AK-47, 8 handguns, 2 shotguns, more than 2,300 rounds of ammunition and gunpowder, a makeshift silencer, more than 15 knives. Now, what's funny is some of the knives that they had laid out are like kitchen knives.
Oh, shit.
Little pocket knives.
Yeah.
X-Acto knives. A baseball bat with nails sticking out. a crossbow, and brass knuckles. None of those fucking things are illegal. It wasn't an automatic AK-47.
Yeah.
Every single one of those things are fucking legal. The guy's got no criminal history, no history of mental anything. He's got legal weapons that he's allowed to have, that millions of Americans have in their house. And he's made 2 little bullshit firecrackers that they're saying he could have caused a lot of damage with those. What, he could have blown a finger off, one of his fingers?
Whoa.
No child pornography found. That's what they executed the warrant on. They execute a warrant on find nothing. Take this dude away because he's got 2 firecrackers in a locked closet.
Jesus.
And curious that they note homeschooled.
Yeah, that's
Again, make
interesting.
And that whole thing, nothing was found in connection with child pornography. That's the very last sentence in the article. What's the headline? Cops went looking for child porn. The guns and bombs they found were just as troubling. Bombs, bro. Bombs. A cigar tube filled with gunpowder is not a fucking bomb. And finding guns in a private home is not fucking troubling.
Mm-hmm.
That's not troubling. No. What's troubling is that they didn't find child porn, and yet they executed a warrant. What fucking evidence did you have?
Wow.
But again, what are we doing? Dangerous sex predator.
Homeschool.
Homeschool. Okay? Let's go to the next one. This is a hard drive. Now this is what's interesting. It's again trying to connect a narrative. You asked if I had followed up on, there's nothing coming out of the Vegas shooter story. Except for this, from the New York Post. Vegas killer's laptop is missing its hard drive. A laptop found in the Las Vegas mass killer Stephen Paddock's hotel room was missing its hard drive, depriving officials of possible clues on why he unleashed his attack, ABC News reports. The madman is believed to have removed the hard drive before he committed suicide, sources told the network. Paddock also bought software designed to erase computer files, but because the hard drive is missing, investigators can't determine if he had used the software, a source told ABC. In 2007, Virginia Tech killer Cho Seung-Wee removed the hard drive of his computer and got rid of his cell phone shortly before slaughtering 32 people. The 2008 Stephen Kazmierziak, who murdered 5 students at Illinois College before killing himself, removed the SIM card from his phone and the hard drive from his laptop. Neither was found. And in 2012, Adam Lanza, who killed 20 children and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newton, Connecticut, had removed the hard drive from his computer and destroyed it. On Wednesday, Paddock's brother was arrested in North Hollywood, California on child porn charges. Okay, Christian, so here we go. What do we got? Your children, he removed his hard drive. What was on the hard drive? What was on the hard drive? You're meant to think. He removed it. What's on the hard drive? What's on the hard drive? Also, your children aren't safe. You notice all the killers that they mention killed young people. They shot up schools. Now, Stephen Paddock shot an all-adult event because you couldn't get in if you were under 18, maybe under 21. I don't know. They're serving alcohol. I don't know how old you had to be to get in there, but certainly adults.
Yeah.
Right? Certainly only adults. So we've got the last 2 things. Adam Lanza killed 20 children and 6 adults, had removed the hard drive from his computer. And then Paddock's brother, Bruce, was arrested in North Hollywood on child porn charges. Now, they had been showing the whole week. The story with Bruce was he had been like squatting in some guy's business, and when that guy threw him out, he left his computer, and I guess there were some child porn images on that computer. The police had been looking for this guy. They arrested him. They found him. They said totally unconnected to the Las Vegas shooting. Found him, arrested him. Well, what I found interesting on all those stories was sometimes they would have the guy that they arrested, Bruce, sometimes they have his mugshot. He looks just like Stephen Paddock.
Right.
Or sometimes they would have Stephen Paddock's picture.
It's weird.
They would actually have Stephen Paddock's picture and then say, this is Stephen Paddock, the brother of the man arrested who got. So it's like connecting, but it's to do this thing where it connects. Oh, so it's just, do you remember they did this poll after 9/11 where it was something like 60% of Americans thought Saddam Hussein had something to do with 9/11?
No, I don't remember that.
Because like there had been this weird narrative back and forth where they were like, we don't really know if we're worried that Saddam Hussein is going to develop weapons of mass destruction and give them or sell them to terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda. And we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud. That was the whole, that they made this connection between Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda, even though Saddam Hussein was killing terrorists. Like, Islamic terrorists were just as much of a threat to Saddam Hussein. He was at Ba'ath Party, which is basically Arab socialism. The same thing that Bashar Assad is, right?
Yeah.
Bashar Assad just spent all this time fighting Islamic terrorists, ISIS, because they're mortal enemies of each other.
Right.
Saddam Hussein, if he found Al-Qaeda people, he would just kill them. He would imprison and kill them. Like, same thing goes for like Mubarak and the Muslim Brotherhood. You know what I mean? Like, they're not, those strong men there are not fans of Islamic terrorism, okay? Not fans. We're fans of it. We create it to fight them, right? So it's trying to make this connection, because now I guarantee you some percentage of the population thinks that Stephen Paddock was into child porn. Guarantee you.
Yeah, I've seen some theories about that too.
See?
About
because
his ranches and stuff like that.
They put it in people's mind.
And yeah, and what's interesting too is that brother was never even really talked about before. We thought it was, at first I thought it was the weird brother.
See?
You know?
Confusion.
Yeah.
It's sowing confusion. You thought it was the weird brother, but you know what? You put the guy's picture. Most people, their reading comprehension is shit, and most people only read the headline anyway.
Right.
We know that most people only read the headline. And they see that guy's picture, and they see child porn, and they see this guy's picture, and they're like...
That, and also everything that's circulating right now is about either pedophilia or...
This is what I'm saying.
The Weinstein stuff and all that.
This is what I'm saying. Now, let's go to this next story, because, so, what do we have? We have an article about Stephen Paddock, then the hard drive's gone, then you have Adam Lanza mentioned in here from 2012, and then what pops up this week about Adam Lanza out of nowhere, apropos of nothing, 5 years later, put up this Lanza story. This is from Newsweek. Newtown shooter may have had interest in pedophilia, FBI reveals. But listen to the story and see how fake news this shit is. Newtown school shooter Adam Lanza was a pedophile who thought he was saving children by killing them, and was in such denial that he suffered from Asperger's syndrome that he refused medication for the disease. The bombshell revelations were the first details from the FBI's secret trove of documents, which detail the Bureau's investigation after the Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, on December 14, 2012. About 1,500 pages of documents released Tuesday show that Lanza didn't snap, but rather planned his attack for more than a year, researching other mass shooting and smashing his computer's hard drive before he killed his mother and then left the gun-filled home he shared with her to kill 20 children and 6 teachers. The documents shed light on some of the unknown aspects of the attack, but there is still much about Lanza, his planning, and why he chose Sandy Hook that remains unclear, even though it's been nearly 5 years since the shooting that devastated the nation and the world. The FBI found Lanza's mother, Nancy, was a gun nut who lived a very paranoid life. She once didn't go to a party because she never opened the invitation out of fears it would have anthrax inside, since there was not a return address document show. Lanza sheltered her son and homeschooled him due to him suffering from Asperger's syndrome, which officials said made him antisocial, awkward around others, and caused him to be bullied. A friend of the family said Lanza was in complete denial of his disease and never took his medications. Now, the other part of this story that's interesting is they're saying pedophilia not based on the idea that they found child porn, not based on any evidence other than the FBI profiler looking and saying, it doesn't seem like he disliked children, it seems like he really liked children, and it's like, and also his Asperger's seems like he was never diagnosed with Asperger's. So one, they're putting something about Asperger's in here, right? Two, They're like, oh, he was a pedophile. From where? They're not even saying that he had a sexual interest in children. They're just saying that he had a delusion that he thought he was saving the children from abuse by killing them. That's not pedophilia. That's like maybe paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah.
But that's not pedophilia. But again, homeschooled, smashed the hard drive. He's a pedophile. This is about sex.
Same patterns.
And Adam Lanza? Out of nowhere?
Out of nowhere.
Out of fucking nowhere.
Weird.
Apropos of nothing. So, the problem, here's the problem though, Christian. The problem is, and why I think the mainstream media is rolling with this is, and again, so much of this I think is organic in the zeitgeist. I think that there are some people pushing small levers, but again, it's reflexivity, right? It's George Soros's reflexivity.
Yeah.
There are little levers being pushed, but like I'm even looking at people in alternative media, and do you remember when the whole Pizzagate thing came out?
Yeah.
And I said, we're not touching this on this show. We're not going to touch this. And the reason why is because you start moving down a path and you give them a lever.
Yeah.
If they know that all they have to do to get you off of some real shit, so it's like Vegas shooting, oh, it's very questionable, lots of problems. Weinstein!
Yep.
Weinstein!
Yeah, even the...
Weinstein! Everybody, mainly the alternative media. The Hollywood pedophiles, there's Hollywood, even people that I respect in the alternative media, I've reached out to them personally and been like, dude, stop focusing on this. You're being given a misdirection. The same fucking thing happened with Pizzagate.
Yeah.
Right? If you go back to the Pizzagate time and look at our show last year and what we were covering, I mean, it was about the fake news. It was about Russia, how there really wasn't a connection. It was about all of this. The release of the FBI documents and how they were complete bullshit. How Grizzly Step was bullshit. How all of this and all of the alternative media at the time was talking about Pizzagate, which ended up going where? Nowhere. It was a dead end. It was a red herring.
It's crazy. And it's not super hard to do too, because of the power of the presupposition. So like what they're doing with the communication in these articles, you automatically start connecting the dots and you go boom, and then since that's such a touching issue for everybody, they get supercharged emotionally and they want to attack, you know.
Well, of course, because here's the deal. People, especially parents, but anybody, it's like the protection of children, especially our own children, but the protection of children in general is like, of course, that's the touchstone of human nature. Like we are, if you think about us in terms of mammals, like we are the most nurturing
and protectors of
and protecting
young.
Of our young of any mammal. And the reason why I say that is because both males and females of our species are hyper involved for long periods of time. I mean, look, it could be half your life back in our evolutionary history, right? From the age of like 18 to 40. You're basically going to be like looking out for your child. There's no other species on our planet that does that shit. So our relationship, our involvement, our investment in our children is such that when you present a threat to our children, we can't help but look. We need to know that that's a bug in our brain. That's what a hacker would call an exploit. Easily exploited. I want your attention. Threat to your children, threat to your children, threat to your children, threat, because you can't look away. Your biology, your evolutionary history will not let you look away. It's just like if I put a hot, nude woman standing here dancing in front of us, we can't do this show. It doesn't make us chauvinist pigs.
Right.
It doesn't make us sex fiends. It doesn't make us anything.
Biological trigger. It's hardwired.
You can't look away.
Yeah.
If we were both hungry and I had a spread of food and the smell was wafting over, we couldn't do the show. It's the same thing. It's an exploit in our brain. Mm-hmm. And the thing is to know when it's being triggered and to not continue down the fucking rabbit hole. Because the further down you get, the harder it is to extricate yourself from it. And you need to know that there's a reason you're being distracted from something. It's a sleight of hand trick.
Sleight of mind.
Sleight of mind.
It's a dirty one, too. Jesus.
And what is it to take away from? What is it to take away from? This was also this week from Activist Post. This is extremists. U.S. government targets, quote, homegrown extremists in broad expansion of warrantless surveillance. So we talked about, the other stories have been about people who have guns, right? Mass shootings, extremism, tie that to homeschooling, tie that to people who won't put their kids in government schools. They probably also won't get vaccines, right? Facial recognition technology, that's part of warrantless. Here's the story. The U.S. government has increased its physical and digital surveillance to now include a broad definition of, quote, homegrown violent extremists in the Department of Defense's manual, which isn't clearly defined, Reuters reported. The change actually happened last year, announced under the Obama administration, but carries on to the Trump administration. This will allow some forms of monitoring of U.S. persons without a court-issued warrant, a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment. The new manual permits the collection of information about Americans for counterintelligence purposes, quote, when no specific connection to foreign terrorists has been established, unquote, according to training slides created last year by the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Quote, the government's authority to monitor people doesn't depend on their beliefs or what the government thinks they believe, but on specific evidence that gives sufficient reason to think a criminal offense is occurring or that the person is an agent of a foreign power, Sarah St. Vincent of Human Rights Watch told Reuters. Quote, a secret determination that someone's rights should be curtailed based on undisclosed criteria is incompatible with the rule of law. The government should explain what it's doing as well as its legal basis for doing it. The slide cited Executive Order 12333, signed by former President Ronald Reagan in 1981 and later modified by former President George W. Bush, which establishes how U.S. intelligence agencies like the CIA and NSA are allowed to pursue foreign intelligence investigations. The order also allows surveillance of U.S. citizens in certain cases which are defined as counterintelligence operations. So, warrantless searches.
Oh.
Based on what? Based on what? Well, they are already starting a narrative. Homeschooling, homeschooling, homeschooling. Which is, what is that? Distrust of government. It's going to be homeschooling. It's going to be refusal to vaccinate. It's going to be discussion of, things that the state is doing wrong. It's going to be identifying as a libertarian, identifying as an anarchist.
Free speech. Posting stuff on
there
Facebook.
You go. And how are they going to do that surveillance? They're going to do it through social media.
Algorithms.
Of course they are. Of course they are. And Facebook and Twitter are already saying that they're going to hand over information. They're handing over information now. Like the information that they're handing over about the ads, you think that relationship stops there? No. Do you think the relationship is only that? Do you think they went up on Capitol Hill and that was all that they discussed? Do you think that's all the government wants from them? All these people who are posting their entire lives on social media, where they were, what they ate. You know, some people who it's like, your children, you are letting the government look at your children every single day. All those things you post of them, you picking them up from school, what they're wearing for their Halloween costume, what they ate for lunch, their medical problems, asking for advice from other people, their behavioral problems, their grades, where they go to school. You've given that all away. You've taken away your children's privacy. Willingly. You gave it up.
It's crazy.
You gave it. There's this great meme that it's like 1960. We better be careful what we talk about on this phone. It might be wiretapped. And then 27 or 1967. Then it says 2067. It's like, hey, wiretap, order me some milk. We're doing it to ourselves.
Yeah.
Hey, wiretap, how do I get to
Yeah.
this destination that I'm going to? Hey, wiretap, call mom. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
So, because this show is based off of, on solutions, what's a good solution for that?
Aha. We can have all of those. The problem is not with the technology. The problem is not at all with the technology. The problem is not with Siri. The problem is not with Google Assistant. The problem is not with Alexa. We can have voice recognition that is decentralized voice recognition. The voice recognition technology doesn't have to store everything on Amazon's cloud.
There you go. Perfect.
We can have voice recognition technology. We can have decentralized search. We can have all these things. So again, the people who want to take it a little bit further than just moving their money into, say, crypto, that's why I'm doing this software development course. That's why I'm teaching more people to code. And hopefully as those people learn to code, they'll pick it up. And I want them to do their own fucking courses. Who cares if you're competing with me? Do it better. Train more people. Do it bigger. Let's do it with this in mind. Yes, it's to get you more skills, but it's like for you to be able to create more freedom and for you to have a choice. As I've been saying, you're either going to be a master or a slave.
Yep.
We can choose. It's just like, oh, I have no other option than YouTube. It's like this week you're going to see it go up on GitHub. Build it. Build it. I'm not even asking you to use an alternative. I'm saying you build the alternative, and you know what? Monetize that bitch. Make money on it. Take this. Please
And
make
the
money.
beautiful
Do
thing,
it well.
The beautiful thing is the powers that be that are abusing these things, they've already set the framework for it on how it can be done in a better way.
Of course they have.
So,
but that's what it always, it's always that this is the cycle, right? It's like what starts out as a sort of revolutionary move towards more liberty. Even the United States is like that.
Yeah.
Eventually, it ossifies. It has to. It corrupts itself. It rots. This is an organism, right? An organism is born. It grows. Eventually, it gets old, right? And it's like, but at this certain point, it gave birth to a little baby.
Right.
Right? And as it's getting old, this one is growing into a strong adult. And pretty soon, this old fucker can't beat this guy.
Well, it's
and this one takes its own move, and it eventually gets old. The story of our culture is the story of the individual. How could it not be? How could a group of individuals not mirror the evolutionary process that happens with the individual itself? As above, so below.
As within, so without.
That's it, man.
And this is a universal principle. You have to destroy something in order to create something. It's a dance. I'm not saying go out and destroy shit, but I'm saying it just happens naturally.
It happens naturally. I mean, this is in the East, they know this very, very well. This is the Shiva, Krishna, Brahma, right? Brahma, right? So it's like Krishna is the creator. Brahma is the maintainer, energy, and Shiva is the destroyer.
The god and the devil.
But Shiva and Krishna are the same.
It's the same thing.
And Brahma is they're us picking out specific places in a continuum that's a whole. We're just picking a certain place. But like it's arbitrary where we pick it, right?
Yeah.
Because the cycle is just the cycle. Right? Like the clock goes around like this. It's arbitrary where you put the markings. Like, but at the end of the day, like it's like this.
Yeah.
And you're eventually going to come back to wherever you are at this point. Like, that's how cycles are. That's what the show's been about.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we're looking at, we talk about technology. We talk about masters and slaves. The reason why it's very important as this comes up, that those of us who are on the side of liberty and who see this happening, the crypto savages, for us to start taking note, because I want to cover this story, then we're going to go to our highlights of the year. I think this is so important. And the reason why it's important is Activist Post's YouTube channel got taken down and they refused to put it back up. 0 strikes. Activist Post put an article up about it this week. 0 strikes. No problems with monetization. No copyright violations. Nothing. And just boom, taken down. After we did a story where we looked at an article. The article was in Waking Times, and it had said, the article was saying that sex robots were the evolution of the objectification of women. And within the article, it said you could rape a robot. Now, we had some problems with that. We discussed it. We discussed why that's not true. And we discussed why that idea is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's the subjectification of robots. Remember we said that?
Yep.
I said, this story is not the objectification about the objectification of women. It's about the subjectification of robots. Now, we do this story. It gets put on Activist Post. The page gets wiped. Now, mind you, Google, they're working on robots. They're heavy in the robot industry. I mean, their autonomous car unit is huge, Waymo, right? It's a big deal. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, they just partnered with Lyft this week.
Oh, shit.
Right? To battle Uber. And they sued the company. So Uber acquired some of the talent from Waymo. And so they've been going back. Google has been suing Uber on this. And Uber's got this company, OTTO, that is the retrofitter for the semi-trucks. And they're already testing them on Nevada's road.
Yeah, that's coming soon.
Right? The robot wars are coming.
Oh, yeah.
So we talk about, no, you can't be giving robots rights, right? That's basically what we were saying.
Yeah.
We were saying you can't give robots rights. You can't treat robots as humans because robots don't labor. If you give them human rights, the reason to do it is because you want to tax, the government wants to tax their labor. But really, you can't tax a robot's labor because a robot doesn't labor. This camera doesn't labor. That computer doesn't labor. These are tools. What you're taxing is you're taxing the human underneath it.
Yeah.
This is the subjectification. And when we get into things like when you say you can rape a robot, that's a problem. So what do we have this week? Now it starts to become clear why, oh, hey, we were ahead of the game and we got our voice squelched for it. Because we're the type of people who will talk about this shit. What do we have? Look at this Saudi robot. From The Independent. Saudi Arabia becomes first country to grant a robot citizenship. A robot has been granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, and it appears to already have more rights than the country's women. The robot Sophia was created by Hong Kong-based company Hanson Robotics, and it appeared at a technology conference in Saudi's capital, Riyadh. It was able to appear on stage by itself without the permission of a male guardian and with its head and body fully uncovered. Many people took to Twitter to point out that Sophia technically had more rights than women. One woman tweeted, quote, Sophia, the first robot to be granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, has more rights than the women there. Strike anyone else as odd? Christian, actually, no, this doesn't strike me as odd. And the reason that it doesn't strike me as odd is because robots are genderless. They have laws that say what women can and can't do, and what men can and can't do. Robots have no gender. There's a reason why Jordan Peterson, fighting against the codification of genderless pronouns and of non-gendered citizens, was very prophetic. Jordan Peterson is, of course, in our last hour here. In Canada, they've already said that certain citizens can be genderless. Oh, you mean like fucking robots?
Fuck.
You mean like robots? And now here's the crazy part, where remember during the gay marriage debate?
Yeah.
The people, the crazy ass religious right, who were like, what's next? A man's gonna marry a dog. A man's gonna marry a vegetable. You know what? holy shit, there was actually some truth to the shit that they were saying. Because when you make it that marriage is not between a man and a woman, and marriage is just between any two citizens, and a country grants citizenship to a robot. So here's the deal. If this robot is granted Saudi Arabian citizenship, and it has a passport, right? Saudi Arabia gives it a passport. It applies for a visa to come to the United States. Okay? And in the United States, an American citizen decides they want to marry this robot. According to current law, how do you prevent an American citizen from, how do you prevent that citizen from marrying that robot any differently than marrying any other Saudi citizen who came here on a visa? Because you could marry a Saudi man, or you could marry a Saudi woman.
Wow. Another problem I see with that too is what if the robot commits a crime?
You send the robot to jail? You send the robot to jail?
Exactly. What the fuck?
Well, and here's the other thing. Does the robot get to decide whether or not I can turn it off? Does the robot get to decide whether or not I can touch it? Whether or not I can reprogram it?
This is gnarly
If I
shit.
keep the robot in my house, is that false imprisonment? If I dismantle the robot, is that murder?
Or yeah, if somebody commits a crime on the robot, what happens then? You know?
Can the robot, if I touch that robot, can the robot get on Twitter with a Me Too hashtag and say that I'm guilty of sexual assault?
Oh my god, dude. This is...
Doesn't it have the right to do that as a citizen? I mean, isn't every citizen entitled to rights? Really, the only things that were keeping this fucking dystopian possibility out were things like marriage is only between a man and a woman. Now, look, I am 100% in support of any two human beings that want to get married, but it doesn't say human beings in the law. None of our laws say human being. Now, the gendered pronouns thing in Canada, like, at least as long as you have gendered pronouns, he or she, at least an argument could be made by a judge doing some construction saying, well, a robot can't be he and a robot can't be she, so this clearly doesn't apply to that robot. But when it's genderless, well, robots are genderless. And if you think this is far off, if people are like, Vin, come on, dude.
Let's see. I'm sure there's somebody.
Our last story. Oh, wait. No. Oh, I didn't put it in. I'm just going to read. I'm going to read it. I forgot to put it in. This was from yesterday. New York Post. Sex robot creator is ready to make a baby with his machine.
Oh, Jesus.
Sex robot inventor Sergey Santos isn't just changing how men pleasure themselves, he's potentially changing society as we know it. The Spanish scientist believes it's only a matter of time before human and robot marriage is commonplace, and he's even hatched a plan for how he can have a baby with his mechanical temptress Samantha. Samantha is Santos' 100-pound sex robot that boasts 8 different programs and the ability to make realistic orgasm sounds. Santos told The Sun Online he believes that in the next couple of decades, we won't just be seeing these dolls hidden in a man's closet or under the bed. They'll be walking down the aisle to say I do to their human lovers. Speaking from his home laboratory in Barcelona, he said, quote, people might look at Samantha as a weird thing you read about, but before they know it, these robots will be doing their jobs and marrying their children, their grandchildren, and their friends. They need to remember that just a few years ago, mobile phones were seen as a non-essential item in society, but now we can't function without them. And Santos claims he will soon be able to have a baby with Samantha. He explained, I can make them have a baby. It's not so difficult. I would love to have a child with a robot. His plan involves using the, quote, brain he has created for Samantha, but upgrading it so it is functioning at full capacity. Santos said, quote, using the brain I have already created, I would program it with a genome so he or she could have moral values, plus concepts of beauty, justice, and the values that humans have. Then to create a child with this robot, it would be extremely simple. I would make an algorithm of what I personally believe about these concepts and then shuffle it with what she thinks and then 3D print it. That's it. I 3D print the robot that is the child of me and the robot. I don't see any complications. Santos has been with his wife, Maritza Kisimitaki, for 16 years, and she has no problem with his relationship with Samantha. Kisimitaki even helps Santos with the development of sex robot prototypes in his lab. Santos has studied electronic engineering and nanotechnology, AI material sciences, and applied materials. He was a well-known expert in nanotechnology before going into sex robot production, even traveling to lecture at Yale. This is real.
This is nuts.
There are people out there, by the way, that robot is for sale. It's about $3,000. People could go look up Santos, Samantha, sex robot. You can go on the site, you can see YouTube videos. The robot can have orgasms. Sounds like orgasms. His most recent thing that he just released, the robot can give hand jobs now. Like he's showing it on a dildo, the robot giving a hand job. We are so close. And the thing is that it's not even about the technology, it's about the law. It's about the law. This is stepping in and opening a Pandora's box that you don't want to open. And look, it's going to be, if you can tax a robot, right? Or if a robot can go in labor. There was a movie with Bruce Willis where everybody was like at home in a thing and they had these avatar robots. I think because it was like disease, the world was diseased or radioactive or something. And they had these avatar robots that walked around. Everybody was like in robot makeup. The robots looked like them. I forget, somebody will probably say in the chat what the name of this, somebody in the chat tell us what the name of this movie was. But yeah, I think that we're potentially coming to that. But this idea, why not marry a robot? Why not?
Well, yeah, and it's kind of the same mindset with the porn addiction mindset. Like, yeah, why not just watch porn, you know? You don't got to deal with any of that stuff, and it's like, no, it's so dangerous.
Well, but forget about what it does to you as a person. We're talking about giving inanimate objects rights, endowing them with ideas of consent and all of this. What proof? What proof do I have that this thing is or is not consenting? Which is part of what this guy's why he's so interesting. Because his sex robots talk, right? And they're basically like, oh, I'm so ready for this. I so want to do this. They're always like ready to go. But then there's going to be this question, right? That you could hear it from the third wave feminists and all that. How do we know that the robot really wants it? Because you programmed the robot to do that, and it's like, stop. You're assuming that the robot has any desires beyond the programming. This is fucking crazy.
It's crazy. I don't even know. It's like beyond words crazy.
But we're here.
Yeah.
We're already here. So this year is going to shape up to be super interesting, dude. Super interesting. I hope that we can be a touchstone for some logic and rationality and really talk about the stories that are going on. With
every problem, there's a opportunity.
So with that, I can't wait to get into this year in review because it's going to be really, really awesome. Let's go to break. We'll come back, and then we'll go to these fantastic highlights from the last year.
The spirit of art. The spirit of technology. The spirit of individuality. Baby Vodka. An ultra-premium spirit conceived by Vin Armani. Handcrafted and distilled in Las Vegas by master distiller George Rotz. Each bottle, a celebration of the individual, custom engraved and hand-signed by the creators. Each element blending in harmony to create a beautiful experience beyond imagination. Baby Vodka, the spirit of Vegas. Created by Vin Armani. Tailored by Christian Rays. Available for purchase exclusively with cryptocurrency at babyvodka.com.
Welcome to the Vin Armani Show. Welcome back, I should say. We are streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Vin Armani. Also on Twitter and Periscope at Vin Armani is my handle there. Unfortunately, today we are not streaming live on Facebook because Facebook has once again blocked out the account that we use to stream, but I will get this up. So if you're watching on Facebook, hello there, but you are not watching the live stream. So we are back. Before we get into our highlights from the last year, just a little bit about Countermarkets. Countermarkets.com, trends and strategies for maximum freedom. You can get your first issue free. We are almost out of October, and so the November issue is going to be coming soon. But why don't you go and get your October issue now? And then you can subscribe, get a huge discount if you use cryptocurrency. Once again, one of these opportunities to start moving forward in a peaceful manner. Because this is the whole thing. It's not violent revolution. It's not getting out into the streets. What is it? It's about taking the problems of the day and solving them. And guess what? When you solve problems for other people, when you create value, you're rewarded. You make money. And that's what we're doing with Countermarkets. We know that there are problems. These are the trends and the strategies to create the solutions. We can't do them all ourselves. We can't. But we can open up and tell you where the opportunities are and help you to start down the path. Also, when you sign up, then we become available. You've got the private Facebook group. You've got all of the back issues when you subscribe. You're going to get all of the back issues as well as continue on for the next year. So I'm looking forward to having you on board. Would love to talk with you more once you are a member and a part of our community. So you can do that at countermarkets.com. So Christian, Surrogates, Christian, go ahead and pop to us. Surrogates was the movie.
Oh,
the Bruce Willis movie.
Okay.
Where everybody is in a...
I don't think I watched it.
It's from 2009. I'm going to go back and watch it again. But it's like nobody goes to work. Nobody does anything. Everybody's like sitting in a little thing at home, like a little
weird
chamber, and controlling their surrogate with their mind. And their surrogate goes out and does everything. I think because there's something in the world. There's either a virus has hit or something, but no one goes out. Everybody just uses their surrogate.
Crazy.
2009. I'm gonna have to go back and watch it.
So,
what are we gonna do? We've got the next 45 minutes or so, maybe an hour. Maybe we go over. I don't know how long these whole things are gonna be. I picked some favorite clips of mine from the last year's show, this being our 1 year anniversary show. Some great clips, man. But I think what it is that how I organize this is sort of where we're at, and like we're talking about, the problems that we see. How there's a couple of people in that way, so that, and I think that represents our description of the world. Then I've got a series of people, and to show there are lots of different ways to come at this problem, and lots of us are coming at it from totally different ways, whether it's from the side of government, from the side of economics, from the side of media, from the side of sustainability, technology, psychology. Art, so many different ways, and even in academia. And then there's the last little section, two of my favorite guests. It's actually David Icke and Jordan Peterson to end it off, talking about sort of the spiritual end of this, which I think is the most important part, and I'm glad that we talk about it on the show. So we can get into this. The first video, a guest that has a special part in our heart,
absolutely,
Lynn Ulbrich, mother of Ross Ulbrich. She was our first guest on the show last year. So she'll always have a very special place. Since then, she's become a good friend. I see her as I go around and speak at conferences. And wonderful person, fighting the good fight. Ross's story is kind of the canary in the coal mine. It's one that more and more people need to know about, because his was a test case for how they are going to fight the coming change. And he's suffering. Really, he's like a Nelson Mandela. I've said he's a political prisoner. In many ways, his suffering is a message to us of what to do, what not to do, what to learn from. And thank God that he's got such a wonderful family who has really taken on his cause and pushed it forward. This is, we've been talking today about this, how weird these new searches and new surveillance is. Ross's case was a sort of a touchstone for that. On our second time interviewing Lynn on the show, she talked about their appeal and some of the travesty of justice. And so that's this particular clip with Lynn Ulbricht. The appeal, you guys are bringing up the corrupt agents. You're bringing up the sentencing being far too much. Was there anything in addition that we missed on this appeal? What else?
There's a very important point.
Okay.
The search and seizure of the laptop, Facebook and Gmail accounts of Ross were made with general warrants, which are unconstitutional. And National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and Electronic Frontier Foundation joined the appeal on this point and said, yes, they're unconstitutional because they lack particularity, and that's a requirement of the Fourth Amendment. That's one of the reasons we fought the American Revolution. It's a big reason they wrote the Fourth Amendment, because it keeps the government from getting into your house and rummaging from attic to basement to see what they can find. They have to have a particular thing that they have a warrant for. Now, in this case, they didn't. They seized the laptop, and their argument is, well, we seized the laptop and it's digital, so it doesn't count that it's not papers like they talk about in the Fourth Amendment. But if it were a physical file cabinet with physical files in it, it would be clearly unconstitutional, no question. But because it's digital, they're saying it's not protected. Now, this is an enormous question for the digital age, because unless we keep our material in physical folders, in physical paper, in a physical file cabinet, they are saying that the Fourth Amendment does not protect our privacy.
So the idea is that they're saying that they could have a warrant for the laptop, and then anything that they find on the laptop is fair game, basically. That they can rummage through everything on. But that really puts pretty much every person into a very precarious situation with that sort of a precedent, because then all you got to say is, oh yeah, they're computers, laptops, phones, and tablets. And then that's now in the digital age, that's everything. People don't have papers in the way that it was written in the Fourth Amendment anymore.
I know the founding fathers forgot that part, apparently. I mean, they're twisting this, and yes, it's a very, very important issue. And it's not only what's actually on the laptop, but Cindy Cohn pointed out, she's the head of EFF, that it's what's connected on the laptop.
Oh, so meaning what? Expand on that a little bit.
Well, like your medical history, or it doesn't have to be a physical folder on your laptop, because then you can link to your history, your browsing history, all that stuff. So it's like a file cabinet on steroids.
Right.
It's not just like a file cabinet. It's worse. And so basically, they're saying we can search Ross's digital house from attic to basement, rummaging around, fishing expedition, because it's not physical material. And so, yeah, huge, huge deal. And if this is being argued in the courts, this is, because really the courts now are grappling with the fact that we're being propelled into the digital age in the 21st century, and they're trying to adapt old law to these questions. And it's happening right now. We're at a really pivotal time in history, and the Silk Road case is one of those cases that is going to be setting precedent. It already has set precedent at the trial level for use of digital evidence at a trial, because almost all of the evidence the government used was digital. No one person came, no witness came forward and said, I saw Russell Brick do this, this, and this. I know he did. He told me this. Nothing. It's all digital, and they're linking anonymous identities with Ross. And I was told, I've been told by more than one crypto expert, that it's child's play to go into a laptop and change things remotely. They can even do it from a drone, apparently. That it's nothing to tamper with, and as we know, the agents have the ability with digital evidence, and then it's put up on a screen. The jury's told this is real, and they're reading this, you know, and it could have been completely fabricated. The whole chat with DPR and Carl Force about murder for hire, Carl Force could have written the whole thing.
Sure.
I've been told that by many people. It's not like, and we don't even know who DPR was then. There's no proof of that. And so you can see the implications of the government being able to fabricate. All they need is a computer and maybe Photoshop if they want to get fancy. And meanwhile, a bank won't take a screenshot of a mortgage statement. A mortgage company won't take a screenshot of a bank statement.
Right. Because
they know how easily faked it is. But Catherine Forrest Court had a lower standard of proof.
So what we have is clearly we're stepping into a new world, and this is what I've been arguing for, is that there's two options. Either we sort of start anew with the base principles that we know have worked in the past. Maybe we go back to that moment in 1776. We go back to the Declaration of Independence. We go back to the concepts that formed it, not the document itself, but what are the underlying concepts that we are holding to be self-evident, the truths that we hold to be self-evident. And we start building again as though we were Thomas Jefferson, but living in the times that we're living in now with robots, with the internet. How does the system look different? And on the other side is going to be the old culture trying to strap on new laws where the power is already there. And the problem with that was addressed by our next piece, James Corbett. Fantastic. We've had some fantastic talks with James. This one, I really love this piece. He had mentioned the kakistocracy, which is the rule by the worst. And I'd said, can you expand on that a little bit to talk about the reason why, if we allow this old regime that is ruled by the worst, that is corrupt and old, as we said, if we allow it to strap on and to rule over us in this new age, why that's such a bad idea. Here's James Corbett. Could you expand on that and help people understand that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a great disservice that we are almost incapable of comprehending the extent to which there are people, clinically, I mean, this is clinically demonstrable, people whose brains function differently than you and I. This is psychopathy. It is a group of people who literally do not experience the human emotions that define yourself and myself and most of the people that we know. The ability to empathize and understand and care about other people on an emotional level is completely missing from a certain section of the population. And there are various estimates as to how great that is, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%. But at any rate, there is a percentage of the population that you can demonstrate their brains function differently than you or I in a way that is almost incomprehensible to people who have normal empathetic understanding of their fellow human beings, which... I mean, it's a big topic, and I've talked about it quite a number of times over the years on my podcast, including a couple of episodes of my podcast that I did several years ago that have recently been revived for my Corbett Report Extras YouTube channel, where I'm taking some of my old audio-only work and putting it into a YouTube form to help spread the word. So there was an episode I did on, I can't remember what it was called. Oh, Our Leaders Are Psychopaths, and revisiting psychopathy. And it's a big topic, and of course, the risk is making it into some sort of witch hunt where people just see psychopathy everywhere. Oh, this guy's a psychopath, or just use that term, willy-nilly. But I think we do have to confront the very real reality of a certain group of people that do not experience any sort of empathy with other human beings, and as a result, can inflict the most unimaginable cruelty on other people. And not all psychopaths, but certain psychopaths are motivated with a desire to rule over other people. So combine those character traits of a highly motivated person with a desire to rule over people that does not experience a hint of regret or remorse on actions that are so unspeakably cruel that you and I wouldn't even contemplate them. And put that together, and you have a perfect recipe for the most vile and ruthless people imaginable being attracted to these positions where they can live out their fantasies of ruling over other people. It's almost like the system was designed for that express purpose, but at any rate, it's there. There are these troughs of power that who's going to rise to those positions? Is it the people who play nice and think of other people and put other people's interests ahead of their own and work together with others and care? Or is it the people who will slit their own grandmother's throat for the chance of succeeding, metaphorically or literally? And obviously it's the latter. And that's why psychopaths are people who function, high-functioning psychopaths with certain character traits are the people who rise to the top of corporate pyramids. They're the people who rise to the top of governmental pyramids because they are the ones who will do absolutely anything to achieve the power that they lust after.
So, as James said, there are some fundamental issues with the way that the system is designed. And we as crypto savages have the chance to design and participate in the creation of a new system. And in creating that new system, that's one of the reasons why I sat down to write this book, Self-Ownership. That's why I sat down to write that. Because as we move forward, it's to say, what if we realize that the system that had been built previously, and we have the history to be able to look at the history of that system and how the design flaws sort of fleshed out and how the psychopaths filled those vacuums where the flaws were. If we want to not create a system that has flaws, if we want to create a system with less flaws, of course the system will have flaws. That's how systems work, and they get upgraded by the generation after. But if we want to leave them the best possible system that we can, one of the most important things, I cover it in my book, but covered it in detail with a man who's spent a lifetime on it, G. Edward Griffin, talking about why understanding collectivism, what it is, and its difference between individualism, why, if we want to have the least flaws in the system, it's to move towards a system that values individual freedom, individual liberty, and away from collectivism. But I'll let G. Edward Griffin tell you himself.
The story is very simple. That I became aware of what was going on in the world. I knew something was wrong. Became aware in about 1959. And by 1960, I was in full gallop. I wanted to do something about it. And back in those days, maybe a lot of your listeners weren't around in 1960, but the big bugaboo in the world scene was communism. And I was very much into that. I mean, not into communism, but into combating communism and making sure that it didn't take over this country like it was taking over half of the world back in those days. It was galloping like around the planet. China, and even Cuba, and everywhere you looked, the countries were falling to communism. And so I felt that, hey, this is pretty serious stuff. So I became kind of a quasi-theoretician about communism. I even went so far as to go down to the communist bookstore in Los Angeles and hang out down there. Hung out with the comrades and tried to pick their brains. They thought I was a real genuine recruit. They didn't know that I was just there to find out what was going on, what their message was, how they worked, and how much of a real danger was it, or was it just a bunch of nonsense? So I enrolled in all their study classes. I went to their recruiting sessions. They tried to sign me up, and I kept putting it off. But the point is that I read a lot of communist literature. I became kind of a student of Marx and Lenin. Everybody's, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have read, Das Kapital and Communist Manifesto, but they haven't read the works of Lenin. He's a very a very vociferous orator and writer. And I really got imbued with all the rhetoric of communism. If we each according to his ability, to each according to his need, let us unite against war and racism, and all the slogans, which were so good. The slogans are good, nothing wrong with them. But when you analyze them and see what they really mean, you suddenly realize that, oh, wait a minute, this is more like a trap than anything else. And then for some reason, I became interested in the other, what people in those days thought was the opposite of communism, which was Nazism or fascism. So I started to read about that. I picked up all the literature I could find, starting with, of course, Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. And I got deeply into that too, and somewhere along that path, then, it dawned on me that these two groups were exactly the same. They believed the same thing underneath all the insignia. One had a hammer and sickle, the other one had a swastika. Okay, one wore, a different uniform than the other, the military did. One group was a devotee of socialism. The Nazis were, the Nazis, Nazi stands for German version of National Socialist Party. The Nazis were socialists. The communists were socialists, except the Nazis were National Socialists. The communists were International Socialists. Big deal. And everywhere I looked, I began to peel off the label and look beneath. I said, my gosh, these people believe exactly the same. And that opened my eyes. And it didn't take, I should say, it took quite a while before that sunk in. And it didn't really hit me till probably about 1990 that we were building in America, in the name of fighting communism and in the name of fighting Nazism, we were building the same thing under a different name. We were calling it, we had different names for it. Different presidents came to power. One called it the New Deal. The other one called it the Great Society. Slogans were put on it. Today, they're calling it social justice. And all of a sudden, I realized back in the 90s that all of these movements, we were being asked to choose one that we liked. Were we communists, fascists, Nazis, socialists, left-wing, right-wing, Republicans, Democrats, given all of these apparent options. But when you peel off the labels and looked at what the leaders of these groups believe, they believe the same thing. So I became curious, what is that same thing? And it wasn't difficult to find. It's in the literature, The people have written about this for a long, long time. It's called collectivism. You go back 80 years, 100 years, and the literature on social movements and political movements is very clear. It's loaded with this word collectivism. And the opposite of collectivism is individualism. But once I began to read about this topic in terms of the old literature, I realized that we had lost something. Starting about World War I, by the end of World War II, those words, collectivism versus individualism, were gone. They were not popular. The political leaders of the world did not want people using those words because they were too descriptive. They really said something. They really meant something. What they meant is that underneath all of these different ideologies, there was this group of people who were the collectivists, that as the word sort of suggests, they believe that the collective is the center of society. They believe that the group is more important than the individual. See, the individualists believe that individuals are the center of society. That's the individual humans are the essence of any system. Whereas the collectivists believe that the humans, the individuals, must be sacrificed, if necessary, for the greater good of the greater number. And I was taught that in school, and it sounded like a good idea in those days because I associated it with this word called democracy. There's another one of those words that needs to be redefined. Democracy means the greater good of the greater number. It means majority rule. It's all about numbers, you see. It's about collectives. It's about groups. It has nothing to do with the individual. So that's where it all started. It was a gradual awareness that we were being divided. When I say we, I'm talking not just about Americans, but in just about every country in the world, especially in the Western world. People were being asked to choose up sides. Well, as former President Bush said, you're either for us or against us. That's your choice. Mm-hmm. Which side are you on? You're either a Democrat or you're a Republican. Who are you voting for? Don't talk to me about anything else. Democrat or Republican, that's it. Well, wait a minute. Some Democrats and some Republicans I like. Some Democrats and some Republicans I don't like. Not important. Who are you for? Right. You got to choose up sides. Left. Are you on the left or are you on the right? Are these really opposites or not? So forth. Okay, you get my point. Once you peel off the label of all of these movements and look underneath, at least now I'm talking about the Western world. We can come back later if you wish and talk about theocracies. We still exist in a large part of the world, as you know. And that's got nothing to do with left or right or any of this collectivism or individualism. It's a whole different animal. It has to do with God is ruling us, and this human being is a representative of God. So we obey the human being because to do that is to obey God. That's a theocracy, more or less. And they still exist. But now in the Western world, in our world, this is not present. What we are dealing with is this conflict between individualism and collectivism. So I've made it my crusade for quite a while to quit talking about socialism and capitalism and communism and Nazism and left and right and Republicans and Democrats and conservatives and liberals and neoconservatives and moderates and all these words that mean nothing. And I have been crusading to get people to think about the essence of collectivism and individualism. And I'm happy to say that probably it's not my efforts, it's the efforts of a lot of people who have probably come to the same awareness and have decided to stop using those old garbage words, start using real words that mean something. I'm happy to say that more and more in the debate on the internet, even on television now, I'm hearing people say on television, on the so-called mainstream media, and they're using words like, well, collectivism is on a roll or something like that. And I think, did I hear this guy right? He's actually using the right word. So we're gaining strength on that. And if we can keep that ball rolling, I think we're going to be very happy because now let's get to the essence.
Yes, please.
The words describe something important. And what it describes is a political ideology. And what we believe is what we do, and our actions are based on our beliefs. And if we have a political ideology, a belief system that teaches us that it's correct for the group to be more important than the individual and to sacrifice the individual for the group, we have made a huge mistake. And indeed, the world has made that very mistake. Because most of the world now embraces collectivism in one form or another.
The message has been there. There have been these individuals who moved forward fighting the good fight in the last generation. We're ready to start moving forward. One of the individuals who really was able to grab up, and I know that a lot of our guests, I kept hearing that this was what sparked them off into the liberty movement. It is to say that this has been a generational struggle, that we're now taking the mantle, and of course, probably none more important to this movement in recent times than the next up on this list, which is Mr. Ron Paul talking about why young people, for the first time in a long time, are gravitating toward this movement. I know I'm seeing it, but here's a first-hand account of how he sort of sparked this thing off, the godfather of the movement, Mr. Ron Paul.
And when I would talk to young people when they were enthusiastic about the campaign and excited, and we would talk, and I'd ask the same question you would ask: how did you get interested in this? And they would usually respond, "Well, it sounds like you're telling the truth." I said, "But other candidates." Or very often they don't say they don't like the Constitution. They all take the same oath. They all say the same thing. I said, what's different? They said, we don't believe the other ones. So it was a matter of a message that had been spoken. People wanted it, but a lot of the spokesmen for the liberty message was lip service, and young people seem to be able to see through this a little bit better. But when they get in the older age group, I just think that they have been conditioned. And I even think that that is what happened. I think we're all born with a natural instinct to be ourselves. And then when it gets beaten out of us, you know, we have to conform. Our schools do it. Our government does it. The movies do it. And everybody talks about, well, you have to be part of this system. You can't be an individualist. And yet, I've figured it took me a decade or so once I discovered, you know, I don't like what I'm hearing, and I go searching and looking for the explanation. So I was just excited about discovering Austrian economics that defended on moral principle and economic principles the free market, the real free market, and sound money, much of what the founders believed in. They believed in the gold standard. They didn't believe that you should have a powerful central government. They didn't preach the idea that we should have a police state. They didn't believe that we should be the world policeman. Yet that was all happening. And I think the one thing that really caught the attention of the young people was the change in attitude about personal liberty after 9/11. And that's when we had the TSA come in, we had the Patriot Act come in, and NSA came in, and NDAA, and civil liberties were being challenged. And the instinct of a young person is, you know, whether it's when a young person is 2 or 16, there is an instinct, you know, to want to be your own person. And I think that in a political sense, when it's offered to them, and if they can get the message of individual liberty from a moral viewpoint, that you have a right to your life, you have an obligation of your life, you have an obligation to take care of yourself, but the government has an obligation to protect your liberty and nothing else. They're supposed to get out of the way and let you take the care of your own problem. And this sense of responsibility, the young people responded to, because I didn't go to the campus and say, you know what, I don't even believe in student loans. That's a system that's not going to work. That's going to create a lot of debt. No, I didn't do that. The idea that you're responsible for yourself on personal liberties, on how you run your personal life, your economic lives, and try to prevent the draining of the wealth from the country and our youth by sending them off to fight no-win wars, which we continue to do. It's a very, very positive, attractive message, not only to the young. I was delighted that during those campaigns early on, young people, sometimes 14 and 15 years of age, would drag their parents to my office, and they were influencing their parents, and the parents were delighted that their young people were thinking about this, but they were enthusiastic about it, and there was a message, and I think it is a message for young people, but we all should be young at heart when it comes to thinking about liberty, because the truth is, liberty, in the sense that I'm talking about it, is a very, very young issue. When you think 200, 300, 400 years, or even maybe a little bit longer, that's just a drop in the bucket when you talk about how long the earth has existed. So this experiment with self-reliance and individual liberty is something brand new, and I think it's something where there's a fertile field out there, in spite of what we are dealing with in Washington. Washington is the worst place to try to figure out, you know, how they're really taking care of us and protecting us. But when you go to the campuses and talk to young people, find out what their desires are, they are very receptive to this message of liberty and self-reliance, responsibility, and allowing you to keep the fruits of your labor. So this is, and to allow to run your own life. I mean, how can anybody deny this, especially since it's that system that produces the greatest amount of prosperity? The system we have today is designed almost to destroy the middle class, and the middle class keeps getting smaller and smaller. And that message is not that difficult to understand, and if they hear there's an answer to it, they become optimists. I was always surprised. I'd spend 45 minutes talking about the problem and 10 minutes talking about the answer. Is not complicated. And the surprise to me was the people who came out to support this message were very, very excited about how positive it was. And I thought that was pretty good. And I wondered about that. And somebody said, well, why they're positive is they're finally hearing what the real problem is, and nobody's lying to them, that everything is for free, and that the problems are there, and this is what it is, but the answer to it is something very positive. So that's an exciting message as far as I'm concerned.
And for us on this show, it's always all about answers. It's interesting to know how we got there, but for the remainder of this, some of my favorite guests and people who have now become friends of mine, talking about all of the different ways that we are coming at this thing to build this new world. And there are lots of different ways, and we all need to take the way that we feel is right, so long as we respect other self-ownership, we respect things like the non-aggression principle, we move forward with an understanding of morals and ethics. We could hit this from a bunch of different angles, and so we're going to show some of those. The first one that's up on this, good friend of ours now, Mr. Adam Kokesh, talking about hitting it head on, going straight to the swamp, and following in Ron Paul's footsteps, taking it to Washington, but he's got a brand new take on it for a brand new generation. Here's Adam Kokesh.
So how did this come about for me? I suppose it was, 2008 when Ron Paul was first running. And I was a big Ron Paul supporter, Veterans for Ron Paul, all of that. And someone just asked me, well, someone said, I was talking about Ron Paul's positions and his platform and the Constitution and the problems with the Constitution. And someone said, well, if you were president, what would you do? And I'd be like, abolish the entire federal government? Duh. Like, that's the only real ethical position that you can take. If you're saying, like, I'm given this authority that's illegitimate, I'm going to throw the ring into the fire. And it sort of started as just like the silly fantasy answer to that question. Well, what would you do if you were president? And then I started to see it as a very realistic opportunity. And some people would say it's futile. And there's some analyses of how we transition to a free society. And I'm a big fan of Konkin, Sam Konkin III. I'm a big fan of agorism and counter-economics and rendering the state obsolete. And I firmly believe that the most important thing in bringing about a transition to a stateless society is the paradigm shift, changing the mentality. If we were to overthrow government in a revolution or abolish it entirely by, I don't know, bombing all the buildings or something. Not that I'm suggesting that, but hypothetically, if it were to happen.
Yes, please. Keep it on your channel, please. Not on mine.
If it were to happen, and the general public was still statist, they still believed that they needed to be governed, another government would come about. And this is from understanding that government is a product of the public paradigm. Government is not just something that, it's not like a bunch of aliens landed and said, we're going to be government now, although some people do subscribe to that theory, I understand. And no, the government is a product of the people. Alexis de Tocqueville said in Democracy in America in 1831, in a democracy, a people will get the government they deserve. That's not just in a democracy, that's in every system of government, because every system of government relies on the consent of the governed. And what we should do, first and foremost, is educate people to remove that consent and see how that's in their best interest, both in the short run and in the long run, to not be governed by anyone, that is, by force and coercion, as when we talk about the institution of government. And if that's the case, at some point still, if it's the case that the paradigm shift happens and people change their lifestyles and really render government obsolete before we're able to address it electorally, then you're still going to have the institution, you're still going to have the buildings and the bureaucracy, and if nothing else, someone's got to go in at some point and be like, hey, do you mind electing me president so I can just, go in and clean up this mess and get rid of all this stuff and send everybody home, in order to make it a more orderly process, so that we don't have some of the fears of a power vacuum or the backlash that will result from millions of people losing their employment from government going away. So there are two ways that this is really important. If this is possible, what I'm proposing, to peacefully dissolve the entire federal government, then it is imperative, like a doctor stopping on the side of the road, that they at least try to minimize the suffering, that they try to save lives that are in danger, that we owe it to ourselves to at least try to see if it's possible to dissolve government this way. And if we find out that it's not, we will also know that through this effort of proposing it this way on the biggest platform possible, getting the message in front of as many people as possible, we are also changing the paradigm as effectively and as efficiently as we can. And this is a great part of the Libertarian Party that I got to give a shout out, as I always try to, with Will Coley for this, who was a VP candidate in 2016. And in one of the debates, he was asked, what's his biggest regret? And he said, not getting political sooner as a libertarian, because it has given me a huge opportunity to talk to people who would otherwise never listen to me. Government is stealing from you to make itself relevant, to build up this platform in the electoral process. And if you say, oh, you know what, I'm just going to ignore that, I'm going to let them tax me, and I'm never going to take advantage of that, well, you're missing a huge opportunity, if for nothing else, than to get the message out there. And that's what Will Coley so beautifully represented. But I do genuinely believe that this is possible. The only ways this isn't possible is if government fully collapses first, in which case the more people we wake up, the more peaceful that transition to a free society will be.
So we're looking for a peaceful transition. One of the ways, as we've talked about on this show, that is going to be possible, even if, look, we got to have the prong that's going after the state on the state's turf and on the state's level. And what Kokesh is talking about is as peaceful as it can possibly be and still dealing with the state. We can't just leave the state out. But one of the things that I do believe that we can do is we can make a separation of money and state. And that was explained so well by the next up, Eric Voorhees, the CEO of Shapeshift.io, who also, his blog is called Money and State. And I asked him about what the separation of money and state means, and also how we can start looking at money itself differently as a product in this new marketplace that we are seeking to create. Here's Eric Voorhees, the CEO of Shapeshift.io.
Yeah, so I think most people, when they're in grade school, they learn about how it was an important development in society for church and state to become separate. Where before that was the case, religion was the government to a large extent, and religious beliefs, you could not have your own religious beliefs. They sort of were dictated and centrally planned by the region that you were in. And today everyone believes that it's very good that church and state are separate things, regardless of whether you're religious or not. Most people think that that's good, that those things are not paired together. And yet something even more important than religion, money, which affects everyone's lives, that is still centrally planned by the state. There's no reason that it should be, and the separation of money and state, I think, will be the great achievement of cryptocurrency. That its ultimate purpose is to separate money and state, not by getting enough people to vote on it, because that will never happen, but just by providing an alternative in the marketplace, and for that alternative to win over time. So that's what I mean by the separation of church and state. It's important for the very same reason that the separation of church and state is important. And hopefully, school children some generations from now will look back on the separation of money and state just as fondly as the separation of church and state. To your other question about money being a product, yeah, I think this is something that's a little counterintuitive for people. But if you understand how money originates, it originates essentially from barter, where if you take any group of people, they will start trading with each other over time, and they will start trading for they'll barter with each other, and they will barter eventually for things that they know other people will barter for. So even if they don't want the cow, they will barter for a cow because they know someone else will want it. And so what you get when that process plays out is a small group of commodities that end up becoming widely traded, and all money is the name that we assign to the most popularly traded item. So in that context, money is just a good. It's just the name we give to the most popular good. And this was more obvious when it was gold or precious metals, but now that it's sort of this abstract fiat nonsense, people don't think of it that way. But really, it's just a product, right? So when you're buying things with money, you're just bartering the money for the thing you're buying, and the person selling that thing to you is bartering that thing for your money. So that's really where that term comes from. And if it's not wise for a government to centrally plan, the production of shoes in a market economy, it is similarly unwise for the government to plan the production of money.
So, on the topic of production, there's certainly a whole group of crypto savages out there. And thankfully, a lot of them are adopting the term crypto savage, and I think that it ties all of us together. But certainly when you're talking about products in a marketplace, none are more important than food and energy, and there is a great and growing community of people that I'm glad that I've now been able to be connected to through the person who's next up, which is Jack Spirko of the Survival Podcast, someone who has been helping people to gain that courage and the skills to be self-sufficient no matter what happens. And one of the biggest advocates for freedom that I know, one of the biggest advocates for creating this new culture and this new system free from violence. When Jack was on the show, I asked him, you know, from his perspective, what are the most important things that we should be doing as this movement? And his answer, as always, was fantastic. Here's Jack Spirko.
There's a few things there. One of the first things that we need to do in this community is stop beating people about the head and shoulders who are 80% to where we are. I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that we make. I think it was one of your earlier episodes. I remember you played the Libertarian presidential campaign video for Gary Johnson, and they show all this stuff about. No, it was for McAfee, right? Mm-hmm. And you know, they showed, but at the end they showed this NASA, you know, space shuttle launch, and even I was like, you know, it's like the one damn cool thing government's done. Why SpaceX rocket in there? But it wasn't that big a deal to me because the message was very clear. And that message was designed to get people that are nowhere near where we are, but they're a little closer than they maybe were 3 weeks ago because something has gone on in their life to tell them, hey, you know, your side's not really any better than the other side, even though they don't want to admit it, and to drag them just a little bit in this direction, maybe get them into that stepping stone. And what I saw online was just like this hatred come out of both sides of the voluntarist anarcho communities, like, you know, that's statism and whatever. It's like, good Lord. I bet you drive a car, you have electricity to your house, you know, you pay income tax on the money that you have to pay income tax. Like, we're all part of that system whether we want to be or not. But I think the way you start to get people together is to get them back to their true nature. And I'm going to say some things that might sound a little bit funny here at first.
Please.
But we talk about people call them sheeple, and we say that they become sheep, right? And I think it's just because sheep rhymes with peep, so we get sheeple. I think what we really have is that human beings are supposed to be a lot more like a pig than a cow. Okay? Hear me out on this.
Please.
The pig will go feral in an instant. If you put a pig on a great big ranch with fencing all around it designed to keep a pig in, that pig will push on every piece of that fence until it finds one little hole. And if it finds one little hole, it will get out. If it's in a greater contained area, at least it got a little bit more freedom, a little bit more liberty. And if it gets all the way out, it will start breeding with other pigs. It will go completely feral. And by the next generation, it'll start to look like a wild pig again. And it'll live the way a pig is supposed to live. And you cannot domesticate a pig. You can train a pig to think it's domesticated, but give it this much of a chance, it'll run away. If you keep cattle on a ranch and you have your barbed wire and your electric fencing and all to keep the cattle in, and you let that infrastructure degrade, but there's been generations of those cows on that ranch, they won't leave. They'll accept those boundaries even when they're decayed and broken down and what have you, and that cow will sit there. And if it's a dairy cow, when you milk it, it actually seems to enjoy being milked. This is how human beings are behaving. And what it is it's not really, they know it's wrong, they don't want to do this, but it's a form of defeatism. Like, I've heard people say, well, there's no reason for me to build a business because they're just going to tax it, or I'm not going to buy property because then I'm going to have to pay property tax. And it's like, geez, you know, if somebody put you in this prison, like a big fenced-in area, and you saw a place you could get through that fence and get a little bit more freedom, would you go through the hole or not? And I think a lot of these people wouldn't anymore. But once we get out to that next layer of independence, then we start testing the boundaries. Where's our next breach point? How do we get a little further out? And what you find, I don't care if you come from a left view or a right view, the further and further you get out in that spectrum of liberty, the less these little differences really affect us.
I think it's a huge message, and I think it's what you know, we've talked about it on this show. This is not a political show. And the more free you get, the more you realize how little politics matters. Something, however, that on the show we constantly push as artists ourselves, and realizing, and we even talked about this before the show, something that Jordan Peterson, who's later on in this little segment, talks about, is the idea that you have to embody an idea before you can articulate the idea. And the people in society that embody ideas first are artists. And there are so many I know who are listeners to the show, and it is so important that when you feel inspired with this message, and as you can see, it's an inspiring message, share it with art, because art can communicate in a way that nothing else can. And I think that was articulated quite well by one of, also now a good friend, Eric July, lead singer of the metal band Backwards. Here's Eric July.
You put a freaking target on your back when you're amongst this game and you are trying to put a message out that goes in the direct opposition to these other people that generally dominate and call the shots. You have a target on your back, and we've seen that. And even we're only 2 years old, but we see that ourselves. So I think it's scared. People are scared, but in the same respects, you get those libertarians who also think that we should, like, they want to completely disregard that element of art. And I think that's kind of both of why we have art. You have one side that is scared, and then you have the other side that want to completely ignore it. I've had this conversation with people, you know, libertarians all the time. I'm like, definitely the ones that are amongst the Libertarian Party that go politics, 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 and think that that's how this game is going to be won, and they put all their eggs, you know, in a basket of politics. I'm like, you completely ignore culture. Like, that's not how this battle is going to win. It's never been that way. You've never seen a battle won. When you talk about people kind of going towards your ideal and your ideology and your philosophy, it starts kind of in the culture, in the arts and stuff like that, and then it trickles down and kinds of you know, spreads everywhere else, because again, politics are more so the lagging indicator of that. So libertarians need to stop ignoring that aspect. And I would also say, and this was probably a hard pill to swallow for a lot of them, because I had to realize this as well. I'm like, why am I putting all of my scarce resources and money and stuff like that towards people who I know are very, very influential, but speak in direct, like they're kind of diametrically opposed to what I believe in? And that was the hard pill for me to swallow, because yeah, I'll throw some funds their way to my favorite artists and stuff like that, you know, who I like what they say and stuff like that. But I'm like, damn, I'm funding basically their ability to keep speaking this, you know, socialist nonsense to a lot of people. So I'm like, why don't libertarians use this? While I like the idea of, you know, kind of the counter economic of it all, and libertarians, you be surprised how we're seeing this with the Backwards album, how much you can really boost people into really having platforms to get these ideas if you just put your resources in supporting them. And I'm not saying support them just because they're libertarians or just because they're anarchists or anything like that. I'm just saying acknowledge that and kind of weigh your options here. Would it make more sense to fund somebody's efforts that are putting forth some type of art that is along your lines of thinking, or would you rather put this money, probably spend more for the same product, and put your money towards these people who you know are going to get out there on TV and use their platform to speak in opposition to what it is that you actually believe in? So that's what and that's why I love supporting people who have their own, you know, are kind of, you know, along our lines of thinking, and they have their own products that they're kind of producing on the art side, as well as just in a kind of the market side. I like to support them and use my funds to help them out before I go directly to some popular artist who I might, you know, like their music, but I know, again, they're going to use the power that they have to speak in opposition to what I believe in. So I think that's where the focus kind of is going to have to be. You're going to have to kind of get out that, all right, well, I'm scared. I know I'm going to have a target on my back if I use my art, but at the same respect, stop ignoring the artistic part of things and realize how much power you wield, and even in the libertarian and anarchist community, how much power you guys wield. And it's a lot of talented people within our community, and I think it would do us a great benefit if we went out there and supported them.
And as they say, in terms of wielding power, the pen is mightier than the sword. And in this movement, there's probably no one with a mightier pen than Jeffrey Tucker. But again, stepping out there, someone who has put himself out there so many times. And as Eric says, like, it is scary, and you do put a target on your back. But we've got targets on our back in many ways. But there's a reason why. And the reason why is because there's a vision underlying it all. And that comes through in your art. And what that vision is, I think, for all of us, was articulated so well by Jeffrey Tucker himself on this show about the vision that we are all pushing forward to in the world that we would like to see. Here's Jeffrey Tucker.
I want to be sympathetic and like see the world from their point of view. But the problem with both these sides is they don't understand liberalism. They don't believe in the possibility of human community, which, I mean, it's like, what? You know, I get so frustrated with this because I live in Atlanta, right? You live in Vegas, right? But, you know, Atlanta, I mean, we've been through a lot of hard times in Atlanta for like the last 150 years. But you know, I can go down the street in Atlanta and go to, and this is why the city inspires me so much. I can go into a Thai restaurant that's mostly populated by, you know, middle upper class, you know, African American Atlantans that are enormously prosperous, and you know, and mix them with whites and Hispanics, and in these commercial spaces. I mean, what you see and experience is a beautiful, glorious, inspiring harmony where everyone in that space finds value in each other. I mean, to me, something like that scene, which is available everywhere in Atlanta, refutes all these ideologies of leftism and rightism. Just reality around you if you live in a place like Atlanta. I mean, so every day I see refutations of this. Like, you know what? You leave people alone, let them keep their stuff, and give them an environment to trade and exchange with each other, so we can discover that each other are actually dignified, valuable human beings, aspirational, we can all win together, then all this ideology just goes away. And everybody smiles, everybody's trying to live a better life, and we all, you know, at some level, love each other, you know? And to me, that's a beautiful scene, and it just cuts through and destroys all these fanatic ideologies that are out there. I just wish people would experience that and like learn a lesson. And what I get from scenes like that is the more freedom we have, the more we get along with each other, and the better our lives are, and the better everybody else is. I mean, to me, that's the essence of what you and I are fighting for, you know? That's it. Like, we can't get people to heaven. You know, we can't make people morally pure. We can't make people make all the right choices in life. But we can create an environment in which people have an opportunity to live the fullest, best life that they themselves can choose to live. And to me, it's like that's our role as libertarians, to fight for that world, to a world of universal human dignity. And as far as I'm concerned, all these ideologies you see in these Twitter wars and these you know, the great battle between Trump and Sanders or whatever, it's all a distraction. It's all a distraction from that core truth.
And getting at those core truths, that's why this is so much deeper than politics, and why I think in doing the show, it's an invitation to step into a whole other way of thinking and a whole other way of being, to break out of the matrix, as it were, to step into a new reality. And that's, I'm going to leave this year off with 2 more segments about how to step into that reality, how to break out of the matrix, and then how to start asking the questions once you step into the light, just like Plato's cave. How to orient yourself to move forward. So the first one, someone who has helped more people break out of the matrix than maybe anybody else in this movement, and one of my favorite interviews from this year, David Icke.
Just my personal point of view, the alternative media needs to start expanding its own vision. It's done a fantastic job revealing elements of the world of the seen and the world of the five senses, so that people can see a different narrative, an explanation of the world that they see and experience every day. But that world is just a movie screen. It's just the movie screen that's coming out of the hidden. It's coming out of hidden forces, hidden networks, hidden manipulation. Even in the end, not even human. And that's where the projection, which slaps on the screen, and we call this the world that we see, that's where it's coming from. And when you see that vision of the scale of what's going on, then really who's in the White House becomes much smaller deal than it would otherwise be. And if we go on trying to change the world of the seen, purely in the world of the seen, then the hidden hand is going to crack open another bottle and celebrate, because it knows, because it understands, or the deep part of it does, it understands the nature of, illusory nature of so-called physical reality. That if we go on trying to change the movie screen on the movie screen, then we're never going to get anywhere. You know, if you don't like the movie, it's no good getting a banner and going on the stage of the movie theater and shouting abuse at the screen. It's not going to change. It's happened. It's a done deal. Where is this coming from? And we've got to, I think, as an alternative media, start to bite the bullet, take a big swallow for those that are still only seeing the 5 sense level of everything, and start to tramp down this rabbit hole to much deeper levels, because that's the only way we're going to change anything. You know, in the end, everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness interacting with itself. You know, it's funny, I've just been adding a couple of things to the book I'm writing at the moment about the placebo effect. And the way that people take a pill that is nothing more than a sugar pill, but they believe it to be a real pill that's going to cure them, and the symptoms disappear. Nothing's happened except they believe that pill that isn't is going to remove them. And there's a professor, a surgeon, orthopedic surgeon professor at Oxford University, who's come out this week and said that thousands of people are having unnecessary operations. And the reason they've had the operation is disappeared, not because of the operation, but because they believe the operation would make it disappear. In other words, the mind, the perception is everything, which is why, it's funny, how about that for synchronicity, right. The book Perception Deception on the screen. And it's the perception level that is the foundation of human control. The Trumps and the Bushes and the Obamas and all these people are players in the game. Come and they go. But the level that's always there, and what decides what this world is and how this world is human perception. Let's go back to what I said earlier about Ethel at the checkout.
Please.
If that's the perception of self, that is the life you will live. I've got no power. Nothing exciting ever happens to me. Well, you're a self-fulfilling prophecy. That's what happens. That's what it all is. If you perceive yourself to be infinite awareness, all that is, has been, and ever can be, having an experience, I am all-powerful. I am potentially all-knowing. Then you come from that perception. It is going to interact with reality and manifest from the quantum fields of possibilities and probabilities a very different life, a very different potential. to those that believe they are little me. And if you look at the whole foundation of human control, yes, we can talk about manipulated wars. We can talk about manipulated false flags, talk about manipulated banking systems. Yes, yes, and we should. But the bottom line is the control of perception, because they know, because of these self-fulfilling prophecies that we live, where what we perceive, what we believe we perceive, and what we perceive we experience. That if they control what we perceive, they are, through this process, controlling what we experience.
Right.
And it's this level of taking control back of our perceptions, not only of perceived external reality, it's not really, but perceptions of self. No more little me. No more, oh, well, he's done this research, and so it must be right. I'm just little me. I better just believe him. No! Question it all. Become your own power.
So, becoming your own power. So once we decide to step out of the matrix, like so many people obviously watching the show have, of course we want to know, how can I change the world for the better? And over the past year, I don't think anyone's ideas have been more influential in shaping my understanding of the answer to that question, and certainly no interview has been more has had more of a personal impact on me than the person that I'm going to leave it with for this year. And that is when I asked Dr. Jordan Peterson how we as individuals can work to make our lives and the lives of those around us better. And this was his answer, Dr. Jordan Peterson.
That's the idea that Western civilization has been struggling to develop for forever. You know, since we formulated the idea of the snake in the Garden of Eden, and God only knows how long ago that story emerged. It's certainly tens of thousands of years, and I suspect in its more primordial forms, it's far, far, far older than that. It's like, well, there's snakes, you have to deal with them. Well, what sort of snakes are there? Well, there's real snakes, and then there's, you might call them meta snakes, and a meta snake is your desire to do harm. It's someone else's desire to do harm. It's someone else's desire to torture. It's your desire to torture. It's your desire to burn everything down. It's your desire to hurt the people you love. That's a real snake. And it's a meta snake, right? It's if you think about a predatory reptile as the fundamental enemy of our earliest tree-dwelling ancestors, well, we got smarter than that over time, and we started to understand that the most dangerous thing wasn't a snake. It was maybe a nest of snakes. It was where the snakes came from. And then we started to understand that snakes live in people's hearts. And then we started to understand that snakes live in our own hearts. Yeah, well, that's the emergent idea of evil, right? It's where exactly is the worst of all possible snakes, and it's not the one that's crawling around in your garden, I can tell you that. It's obvious. And with regards to getting your act together, it's just, you know, we're doing pretty remarkably in many ways as a species. I mean, we'll lift about 250,000 people out of poverty today, out of absolute poverty, and hook about 300,000 people to the power grid. You just imagine what the world would be like if people stopped making it worse.
Right.
Just that. They wouldn't even have to work hard to make it better. I mean, that would be almost unimaginable. But if they just stopped making it worse, you know, I always think there's this great Tom Waits reading of a Bukowski poem called Nirvana. I love it. It's about this kid who's on a bus and he's really lost, and they go up in a hill and stop at this restaurant, and he goes in there and everything is good inside the restaurant. The people who are serving get along and they're laughing with each other and they make an excellent cup of coffee. It's just a diner, you know, it's nothing fancy. But the tables are well scrubbed and the food is clean and properly prepared and everyone's grateful to be there. And he has this little fantasy that he could just stay there. and no one else notices. And then he goes back on the bus and continues on his trip. But it's good to think, here's the opposite of that, and everyone has been to a place like this. So imagine a diner, okay? Walk in, and you put your hand on a table, and it's sticky.
Yeah.
And you know what that means? It means to get sticky like that means it hasn't been properly wiped for 1,000 times.
Right.
It's got that kind of varnishy stickiness on it, right? And then the waitress comes over, but a little later, or maybe a lot later than she should have, and she looks none too happy to be there, and she isn't that polite. And then she brings you a cup of coffee, and the cup is chipped, and it's dirty, and the coffee is bad, and the cream is sour. And when you mention that, you get a bad look. You know, and you go downstairs maybe to use the washroom, and like every step along the way is a descent into grime and misery. And you come back up and you order your breakfast, right? And the egg is overdone on the bottom and underdone on the top.
Right.
And then you get your toast, and it was burnt, so they scraped it, and then they put cold butter on it just in the middle and pour a whole. Right? The orange juice is only orange in color, not in taste. Right. And the bacon tastes like pig.
Terrible.
And so you think, okay, what is that place? Is that a diner, or is it a place designed to make everyone who comes in there a worse human being? And that's what it is. And that's a good example of the difference between doing things and doing right and doing them wrong. You can go into a diner and it can be a good place. You know, they serve you a decent cup of coffee, you get a good breakfast. And the place is run by someone who actually cares that little corner of the universe is operating properly. And you come out of there a better person than you did when you went in.
So, dude, just keeping our little corner of the universe operating properly, and I think we've done a good job this year. What a year.
Yeah, what a year, dude. Seriously.
What
Amazing.
a year. You look back on that, and it's like, I was watching that myself, and I was like, hey, we're doing a pretty good show here, man. So congratulations on a year.
Yeah, you too. Congrats.
Here's to the next year. Thank you for
Cheers.
Thank you for all your hard work, and
Thank you.
It's been great. We've ran a little bit over, but who cares? We know the boss. So let me say goodbye to the people. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for those people who have stuck around since show number 1. And if you haven't, you can totally go back and check them all out in podcast format on iTunes and Stitcher. You can do it on YouTube at youtube.com/VinArmani. Or if you want to go and check out those specific episodes, probably the best way to do it is you could just go to vinarmani.com and just type in the guest's name in the search box. You might even be surprised what other episodes come up that you will love. So that's it for us. That's what this last year has been. We're looking forward to the next year. I can't even imagine how awesome it's going to be. So I hope that you're here this time next year, but at least be here this time next week, next Monday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And until then, stay free.